Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told how to voice radio, so today I'm going to be, I suppose, finishing off what I started yesterday. Now, the eagle-eyed among you, shall we say, the diehards of people that watch all of my stuff, and I love you all the most, will have noticed that I only uploaded a video yesterday. Well, I'm back. Yesterday, I showed you the 5 best decks from US Nationals that we should be expecting to see this coming weekend. Today, I bring you a selection of sleeper decks. These are decks that maybe don't have quite as good matchups if every deck turns up in force, but they're the kind of decks that could take people by surprise, that people aren't expecting, and with the right matchups, could do very well indeed. So starting off, we have Vespiquen VILEPLUME. Now, this shouldn't be a sleeper deck. Now, one of the first national championships to happen this year was the UK National Championships, where Tamal Cameron took first place with Vespiquen VILEPLUME. Now, yes, I know that was before Fates Collide was legal for tournament play, but all that's happened since then really is people are playing more decks that are weak to grass. So, this deck really consists of 2 main parts. You've got VILEPLUME, who blocks item cards from both sides of the field, and you've got Vespiquen, who for a double colourless energy does 20 damage plus 10 for each Pokemon in your discard pile. You use Forest of Giant Plants to evolve those grass Pokemon as often as you like, as soon as you like, and then you get to go ahead, and if you have a good setup, you can go first. Your opponent cannot play item cards for the entire game, and you can be quite quickly 2-hit KOing, or if you play very aggressively, you could even build up to be 1-hit KOing very, very quickly. If you play against non-EX decks, you don't need many Pokemon in the discard to get the KO. If you play against EX decks, if you lock them early enough, you can easily go for 2-hit KOs, and towards the end of the game, you'll be getting 1-hit KOs. It sounds quite nice. It's got that Trevenant thing of if you set up nice and quickly, you'll win games against basically anything because your opponent won't be able to set up. It's also got type advantage against 2 of our top 5 decks, that being Waterbox and Greninja that happen to be weak to grass. It sounds really, really good. There are some problems. First of all, although it might seem straightforward, it's not the easiest deck in the world to play. That being that the sequencing, the order in which you play the cards, is not the easiest thing to do. It's very easy to make mistakes and not play optimally. But also, it's very much like shooting first in a duel. If you miss, it is not going to end well for you. If you don't get a quick, nice, easy, fast setup, you probably will end up losing the game. Not to mention the fact that there is something exploitable which a lot of people don't always realise. VILEPLUME's got a high retreat cost, and you'll often be playing 4 double colourless energy. That means that if you run out of energy, you lose. Well, that's not the end of the world. You can play Bunnelby to get your energy back, but often if you lose 4 Vespiquen and 4 DCE, you've lost anyway. But it means you don't really have the energy to retreat VILEPLUME, which gives you 2 options. You play a Float Stone, but you've got to get the Float Stone on the Gloom before you evolve to VILEPLUME, because once you evolve to VILEPLUME, you cannot play Float Stones. And if you don't, you're stuck with often a single copy of AZ, and that is the only way to get your VILEPLUME out of the active. No VS Seeker here, because you're trainer locking yourself. Playing Versus Seeker would be stupid. So there are situations where you don't have access to Float Stone or AZ I should say. You can say either, it doesn't really matter. And then your opponent plays a Lysander and you lose the game, because you deck out. But it can win games against anything, and it's got type advantage against 2 of the top decks. Next up, we have Mega Rayquaza, a deck that was really hyped around the release of Roaring Skies, but has fallen off a little bit. And we'll talk about that in a minute. How does it work? Well, he does 30 damage for each Pokemon on your bench. You use the Skyfield Stadium card to have up to 8 Pokemon on your bench, which gives you a damage cap of 240. Which means unless you're facing something like a Primal Groudon with a Hard Charm, you're going to be getting 1-hit KOs on everything. You've got Spirit Link, so you can Mega Evolve without ending your turn. You've got the Delta Evolution Ancient Trait, so you can evolve on the first turn of the game, or as soon as you put him down. Not unlike we just saw with Forest of Giant Plants. And between Double Colourless Energy and Mega Turbo, which allows you to attach a basic energy from your discard pile to a Mega Evolved Pokemon, you can get Rayquaza going in a single turn. you just go Rayquaza, Mega Rayquaza with a Spirit Link, double Colorless Energy, Mega Turbo, and you are off. Now, this is a deck that preys on big KOs. So against something like the Water Box deck with Seismitoad Manaphy, yes, Quaking Punch can slow you down and that can be a pain, but if they don't slow Rayquaza down enough, Rayquaza just takes 3 quick KOs for the win. Same thing about this Darkrai Garbodor Dragons deck everyone's been talking about. And I did do a video about that very recently, so go check it out. If I remember, I'll put a link in the description, and if I forget, someone tell me in the comments. Cheers. If they get Garbodor out, then you really rely on Shaman in this Rayquaza deck. That can be a problem. But if you don't, and they're not going to do that turn 1, I suppose they technically could using Wally, but I don't think I've seen any of these lists actually play a Wally yet. So you're going to have a turn or 2 to set up Rayquaza, and then you can just take big EX KOs for the win. Against Greninja, it's pretty even. You're getting 1-hit KOs, but they've got Ability Lock. Now, of course, that's Shadow Stitching on the Breakpoint Greninja. They're not going to be doing that. I mean, turn 3 really is the fastest that's going to be happening. But it means that if after a couple of turns, your recovery after the first or second Rayquaza goes down can be really slowed down by Shadow Stitching. And of course, I suppose this Rayquaza deck, it's a deck that takes early prizes, and every deck that takes early prizes is vulnerable now that N is back in the format. And Greninja can take easy KOs on Shamans. But if you get set up nice and quickly, this will probably beat Greninja. Going up against Genesect, well, I suppose Genesect can one-hit KO you. I think they need to discard 6 energy. It's not looking very likely. So against a Genesect deck, Rayquaza really should be the favourite because you knock out 3 Genesects and there you go, you've won the game. Trevenant is kind of like a more difficult Greninja in that you can beat Trevenant by just setting up and KOing all their Pokemon with easy one-hit KOs, but they can trainer lock you going first on turn 1 if they play Wally into Trevenant, and unlike Garbodor players, Trevenant players do play Wally in their deck, and they can play Hammers to get rid of your energy. So what's the problem? It sounds like it's got good matchups against some and winnable matchups against others. The problem is Night March. Not only is it an EX deck, and we all know Night March loves preying on these EX-heavy decks, but it's weak to Lightning. Jolteon says hello. Playing Rayquaza at a tournament like US Nationals is risky, ladies and gentlemen, because if you come across a bunch of Night March, it's going to be very, very difficult to win. But if you can avoid the Night March, well, now there is a possibility you can go ahead and do some winning. We can also play Jolteon EX in this deck. Now, that's a little bit more difficult, but if you can get a situation where you've got a Jolteon active with free energy and no Pokemon on the bench to be Lysandered, and let's face it, you're going to be playing double colorless for Rayquaza, and you've got to play some basic energy, it might as well be Lightning, then you can win against Night March. But it can be very, very difficult to get this going without bench Pokemon. Night March can be too fast. But it's an idea. The third deck I want to mention has a potential sleeper for US Nationals, and I get the feeling if I was to play a National Championship tomorrow, this might be the one I choose. I'm not saying that's a good thing, I'm saying it's the kind of deck I would play. It is Sceptile, or Mega Sceptile I should say. And I checked, it is Sceptile, not Sceptile, if anybody's wondering. So Sceptile EX, he's got the attack Sleep Poison. Flip a coin if heads they're poisoned and confused, that's pretty good. Unseen Claw for 2 energy does 130 if they're affected by a special condition. And you can always play something like Ariados to poison them, so you can do 130 with Unseen Claw. But the real beauty here is in Mega Sceptile and his Jagged Saber. 100 damage for 2 energy is fine. Let's not forget that Forest of Giant Plants will allow you to Mega Evolve turn 1 or the turn you put it down. You may attach up to 2 grass energy from your hand to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like if you do heal all damage from them. So you can loop these Mega Sceptiles in that you can go ahead and do 100, attach to Sceptile. They then hit you, and if they don't KO, you retreat, discard the 2 energy, it doesn't matter. You then attack with your second Mega Sceptile, attach 2 energy from your hand to the newly benched and damaged Mega Sceptile. thereby meaning that it has the 2 energy on it again, and it gets completely healed. For decks that cannot one-hit KO Mega Sceptile, this can be very, very good. Now, you're only doing 100, so you're not one-hit KOing as well, but it is something to bear in mind. Now, it's also got a pretty nice ancient trait, which means that effects of abilities will not happen to Mega Sceptile. So, for instance, Greninja breaks Giant Water Shuriken, won't put any damage counters, or Crawdaunt can't get rid of your energy, things of that nature. So, if we have a quick look at the matchups, against Greninja and Waterbox, it's very, very easy. Honestly, being Train Lock isn't really the end of the world. You need 2 Pokemon and 2 energy, and Waterbox doesn't do huge damage early. So, Waterbox, it's EXs that are weak to grass. Greninja, it's weak to grass, oh yeah, and they can't use their abilities on Mega Sceptile. You will have a very easy time against those 2 decks. Those are about as close as you can get to auto wins in the current format in the Pokemon trading card game. Genesect is an awkward matchup because neither's really one-hit KOing. I know that Genesect can if it discards enough energy, but it's very difficult. Sceptile's not one-hit KOing. Sceptile's got the healing, I suppose. It really comes down to setup and who can just be streaming the damage quickly. But if Genesect can come and get a surprise, KO in the middle of the game, that can be enough to swing it. Against Trevenant, I wouldn't hate the Sceptile matchup. First of all, if you really want to try and slow down Trevenant, you can just use Sceptile EX's attack, get them poisoned and confused, try and stop those silent fears coming out. But also, they're not doing a huge amount of damage, and you've got your healing. So, it's not the worst thing ever by any stretch of the imagination. What's the problem? Once again, it's Night March. And yes, I know 210 is a lot of HP, but let's face it, it's absolutely hittable. And if they do hit it, it's a little bit of a problem, because then you lose the game. I said 210, I mean 220. We're talking 11 Night Marches, which is quite a lot, or 10 plus a Giovanni scheme. But let's face it, it's doable. And as soon as it is done, you will lose the game very, very quickly. If you can avoid the one-hit KOs with Mega Sceptile and be healing, Night March becomes a very winnable game. But they can one-hit KO you, and when they do, you lose the game. With Darkrai, Garbodor, Dragons, it's very similar to the Genesect matchup. It all looks pretty even until Darkrai from Breakpoint comes out and gets a big one-hit KO. Now they need a whole bunch of energy on the field to do so, but it's possible. As soon as they get 10 energy down, they're hitting for 220, and you've probably lost the game. So again, Mega Sceptile is very much like Mega Rayquaza. It can win. And if you play against Greninja and Waterbox, it almost certainly will win. You've got chances against most of the other decks in the format, but it does not have a great Night March matchup. I suppose if anyone's playing Entei, that would destroy Sceptile, but I haven't seen that played seriously for quite some time. And the last deck I want to talk about is Mega Manectric Jolteon. Now, Manectric EX is fine, he's kind of fun. He can do 20 damage to the active, 20 to the bench for 1 energy, 60 to the active, or 120 if they've got a tool for 2 energy. But not unlike the Mega Sceptile, it's Mega Manectric we're looking at here. 2 energy, 110 damage, and you get to attach 2 energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Now you can use Rough Seas in this deck to heal, so not unlike Mega Sceptile, you can go ahead and do 110 damage, take a hit, free retreat, which is quite funky, and then sit on the bench healing with Rough Seas while another Mega Manectric goes for it. Oh yeah, and you've attached energy to him with the previous attack. Then, of course, you've got Jolteon EX, but Jolteon EX is much easier to get going in this deck because you can use Turbo Bolt to pop the energy on him. And, of course, Jolteon being electric can be healed with Rough Seas as well. This is a deck, again, which has got a lot of potential. Against a Trevenant deck, you get slowed down by the Trainer Lock, but, like Greninja and Water Box, you've got Rough Seas, and if you can keep your Rough Seas on the field, Trevenant is not that scary. You've got 210 HP, so it's going to take 7 Silent Fears to take you down, and you're doing a constant 110 in the process. Yeah, your Spirit Links are quite important, so you don't end your turn when you Mega Evolve, but other than that, you need a couple Pokemon and a couple of energy. It's a deck that does not take a whole lot of setup. It's not like Night March where you need to play a whole bunch of Battle Compressors to get energy in the discard. And it's not like Greninja where you really need multiple Greninjas and you've essentially got a bunch of stage 3s when the breaks come out. You just need 2 Pokemon and 2 energy. And then you can kind of roll from there. It's not easy, but it's winnable. Against Genesect, you've got Resistance, so that's pretty handy. And you can go ahead and get one, you're not getting one-hit KOs, they're not getting one-hit KOs, but you require less setup than they do. Sounds like a plan. Now, against Greninja, that can be a pain, because you've both got Rough Seas, you're both healing. You're doing 110 consistently, but if they can bust out lots of abilities in subsequent turns, that's going to hurt. But you'll probably go a couple of prizes up, and MegaMan is not a deck that is really that hurt by the supporter card N. They play an N, well, as long as you've got a couple of Manectrics out, all you really need is Rough Seas, because you can attach energy from the discard pile. So it's not got great matchups. It's not got a brilliant Trevenant matchup, or a brilliant Greninja matchup, or a brilliant Genesect matchup. But all of those are matchups it can win. They're not brilliant, but they're far from terrible. The problem, once again, is Night March. 210 HP means 10 Night Marchers and a Fighting Fury belt, and there we go with the KO. And then, of course, as soon as they start one-hit KO MegaMan, you lose. If you can avoid the one-hit KOs, or if you can get a Jolteon going, and then clear your bench so you've only got a Jolteon going, then you can win the game with Jolteon, but that's a lot to ask for. Now, I am not saying that these decks are brilliant or amazing or are going to win US Nationals. That was not the point of this video, ladies and gentlemen. What I was planning to do here was really just tell you about some decks which you should be looking out for, some more under-the-radar decks that, if played by a good player with a good list who gets a little bit of luck with the matchups, could end up doing a little bit of damage this weekend. Now, you know the deal. There's a comment section. Use it. Try and be nice, but put some comments. It'll make me happy. There's a like button. Click it. It will make me happy. And there is a subscribe button. I lost a bunch of subscribers lately because YouTube went and purged a bunch of deactivated accounts, or inactive accounts would be more accurate. So, yeah, it is a little bit upsetting, but hey-ho. You can make it better by going ahead and subscribing and, getting those numbers back up again. As always, the most important thing, thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCGRadio. Oh yeah, and MegaMan against Waterbox, it's, the same kind of thing. Lots of Rough Seas. It's Grenade Hammer against Turbo Bolt. Whoever gets to start taking KOs first will probably win.